So today I'm going to be giving you a video that's very impromptu. It's going to be very in flow, I guess we can say, in my heart. Really going to be doing this one for my intuition because I'm going to be going over my near-death experience that I had and going over what I learned from this experience. So this is something I have shared before, but I don't believe ever on this channel. I don't really know how I'm going to react to reliving the experience, I suppose. I don't really know a better way to put that, but we're just going to get right into it because although this, I guess, could be considered a fairly traumatic thing, for me, it ended up being such a profound experience that it was the catalyst for a lot of different growth in my life. And so I want to go over what I learned, some of the things that happened during that really opened my eyes to a lot of things I was not truly aware of at the time before this happened. So let me just set it all up for you. So essentially, we had just moved to Thailand. I'd moved here with my girlfriend, Lily, and we probably only had been here a week. I think it was a week or two when this happened. And essentially, this first week, we were in more of a hotel. We were looking for an Airbnb that we could rent out. And during that first week at the hotel, I'm like, oh, it looks like a lot of people get around with electric scooters. Like if you go to Asia, you'll find in a lot of places, not everyone has cars, but they ride around on essentially electric scooters or motorbikes. And so I'm like, oh, it'd probably be good to learn how to do that. And so while I'm at this hotel, I asked the guy, can I rent just an electric bike for a week? He said, yeah, sure, had it. And I practiced in a parking lot. I made sure I could do it. It's pretty simple, actually. You know, you just have the engine, you turn it on, you have the end, this revs the engine, allows you to go forward, and you have two brakes. It's almost like a bicycle except with an engine. You have the two brakes on the handlebars pretty much right here, and I'd ridden bikes my whole life. I've done like other things, so it wasn't that much of an issue. It didn't take me long to take to it. And so what happened, just to set it up, and then I'll go over what I learned and everything else, I'll just let it kind of filter or come out organically, is what happened was we got an Airbnb and we went to this Airbnb, and this Airbnb, I'll just say, wasn't what we expected, and we weren't too happy with it. But anyway, the person who I guess was watching the whole thing, there was a bunch of different houses. The main person, this Thai lady, said, you know, it's not going to be ready until like 4 p.m. and it was like 12. And we're like, okay, so we can go into town or whatever. And they basically asked me, do you know how to ride a scooter or bike or whatever? I said, oh yeah, I've ridden a scooter around. So they said, oh, you can borrow the scooter, my husband's scooter. It's right over there. And then you guys can just go into town or whatever, come back at 4 and the place will be ready for you. So unknown to me, this wasn't a scooter that they were allowing us to use. It was a motorbike. And so if you ride a motorbike or you know what a motorbike is, you'll know it's very different, but I had no clue. I thought it was just another electric scooter, same setup, had the, you know, you rev it there, you know, had the two brakes here. And just to give a little context, when I used the scooter, would favor using the brake on my left hand, not my right hand. So what ended up happening was I turned it on and I went to go, and we were in this little alleyway. It was very kind of narrow, so I was going to have to drive straight and then kind of turn around and then go out the road. And thinking back, it's actually a really lucky, very lucky of me that I never made it to the road, but I'll explain. So I turn it on and I start moving forward, and pretty quickly, because you'll find out this is actually a motorbike, it wasn't a scooter, and much faster, got much more power on this baby. And I revved it and I started moving forward. I'm like, that's way too much, I need to hit the brake. So I went to hit the brake, and as I normally did, left hand, boom, squeezed the handle there, and the bike didn't stop. And the reason was because this wasn't a brake, it was a clutch. This was, I believe, changing gears in the bike. The brake was here and only here. But I wasn't aware of this, and immediately, you know, like I was panicking because I had just been out of like autopilot mode. Like I had just been so used to squeezing this as a brake that my hand actually clenched and clamped down on the acceleration. And I went accelerating right into a wall that was in this alleyway. And this wall was exactly at shin height. So I actually ended up, I can't really show you it, there's a scar there, but really just below my knee, like a few inches, I smashed my leg into this wall on a curb. And And my girlfriend was on the back with me. Luckily, I took all of the impact. She didn't really, she didn't hit anything. She kind of just fell over as the bike fell over. So I immediately sprung up to see if she was okay. And then she just kind of looked at me and was looking at my leg. And I looked down at my leg and it was just cut right open. You know, you could see the bone and everything, blood's coming out of it. And I'm looking at that going like, that's a problem. That does not look good. I've never had an injury like that. That, for me, like I just knew in my heart this is not good. And so essentially, because we really hadn't gone anywhere, I mean, God forbid I made it out to the road, like it was just, like the motorbike was facing the road and I had done that and panicked and done that, I would have gone veering right off the road, off a cliff. So, you know, in hindsight, I was very fortunate that this bike was in an alley turned away from the road because, and it's kind of funny how those kind of things happen too, especially when I go over what I learned from this experience. You know, I really do believe everything happens for a reason. It wasn't my time to go flying off a cliff, but to crash into a wall to have some of the realizations that I had. But essentially, I feel like it was raining too. My memory's a bit hazy. I feel like it had just started drizzling. So I just remember that I started phasing in and out of consciousness, and I limped essentially back inside to where the lady was who owned everything and her husband was, to get help. Again, very fortunate that there were people right there that could help me, because if I was in the middle of nowhere and this happened, you know, who knows what would have happened. And I just have this huge gash in my leg. I'm almost going unconscious, you know, blood's coming out of it. And, you know, it's not a good situation. You know, they're kind of trying to do everything they're doing. I think they're trying to call an ambulance or get me to the hospital or whatever else. But we're also in a very out there type place. You know, we're in like a middle of a jungle almost in Thailand, in a place called Chumpong. There wasn't, you know, I think even an ambulance around. You know, I was essentially going to have to go there. And so apparently I started turning white and I didn't even realize, and you know, Lily basically told me this, and I actually started losing my eyesight. That was probably the scariest thing that happened. And I'm sitting there on the table, I'm drinking water because I'm losing blood, so I'm like, maybe I need to just make sure I keep rehydrating. You know, I hear Lily panicking. She doesn't know what's going on. She doesn't know, you know, she can see that I'm getting weak. I'm feeling like I'm going to lose consciousness. You know, what's going to happen. And so all of this chaos is going on. All of this panic is going on. You know, they're trying to get someone to take me to the hospital because I don't think they had a car there. So I think they were calling someone who eventually did come to get me to take me to the hospital. But, you know, we're not really sure what's going to happen at this point. And I'm just sitting at this table, like kind of slouched over, feeling really weak. Apparently, you know, I look like a ghost. You know, my girlfriend told me after, like, you look like you were a ghost. You were just pure white. You know, blood running out of this thing. And in the beginning, I was panicking a little. Like I actually, when I look back, I didn't panic too much, which is really good. I probably might have had a different outcome if I hadn't panicked. And I just kind of intuitively knew I shouldn't go unconscious. Like that's going to lead to problems. But I remember as I started going blind, as I started losing my eyesight, and that was when I really started panicking. That was when I started panicking a little when I started losing my eyesight, because, I mean, that's a scary thing. I've never had a problem with my eye. I've gotten hit in the eye before and it's gone blurry and come back, but I've never had it where it's just like your vision just starts extinguishing and you literally can't perceive anything through your eyesight anymore. And so that was scary. And it wasn't like an impact to my eyes. It was like both of my eyes equally were just fading until the point where I really couldn't see anything. And this is when, and this is like when the crazy stuff happened, that was so profound. A voice came to me. And I actually can't remember if it was a voice or it was a feeling, but there was 100% another presence there with me. And I remember it was above me because I was just looking up when I was perceiving this presence. And it told me essentially that everything's going to be okay. Just to relax, everything is going to be fine. Don't worry. And immediately when I felt this or I heard this, I became relaxed. You know, I'm still have no eyesight. You know, blood's coming from my leg. Lily, my girlfriend, and everyone else is panicking in the background, not knowing what to do. And I suddenly got this feeling of just intense love. And I know that sounds very strange because I'm in this situation where things could go really ugly really fast, right? You know, we're on the precipice, so to speak, in this moment. And I just felt this presence come seemingly out of nowhere. And I just felt this incredible amount of love in that moment. And I started smiling. And I was like just smiling, and I think I was laughing. I can't remember if I was laughing at that point. I know at one point I was, but I just started smiling, and all of the fear I felt when I started losing my eyesight, all of the panic just went away. It just evaporated as if it was never there. And I just felt this euphoric feeling, this amazing feeling of just everything is going to be okay. And it was as if I was being embraced, as if, I'm like kind of remembering it now. It was like I was being just embraced and guided and looked after. And my body or something within me connected to it and knew that everything was going to be okay. And I don't mean everything okay like I'm going to survive and be fine physically. I felt that no matter what was going to happen, I was going to be fine, whether I stayed or I left. And that was why it was such a euphoric moment for me. Because in that moment, I really believe I looked at potentially death or maybe some neurological damage or whatever it was and went, it's okay. And I never had a moment like that in my life ever, where I'd been confronted with something like that, experienced something like that, but then had this overwhelming feeling coming from something, having this love come in and say, don't worry, it's going to be fine. Everything's going to be okay. And again, it wasn't like, oh, you're going to be, like your body's going to survive, all this kind of, it was just, no matter what happens here physically, in the physical world, you're going to be fine. Don't worry. And intuitively, I knew whatever this was telling me this, that it was right. I knew that that it wasn't lying to me, that this was truth being spoken to me, and it was coming from a place of love. And then I'll never forget this. I calmed, I kind of embraced that feeling. I understood it, I felt it, I experienced it. And then it asked me, do you want to go? And I remember this so clearly. It was as if a voice came into my head. It wasn't me, and I knew it wasn't me. It wasn't a thought, it was a presence. And it said to me, do you want to go, or do you want to stay? That was what I remember, at least, kind of the question. And I just paused, I think, momentarily. And from a place of not being afraid to say the answer, I think I'll go. I actually said, you know what? I don't think I'm done here. I want to stay. And with my ego completely removed, my ego completely gone in this situation, not even trying to survive, but just feeling and soaking in this love and acceptance of, you know what, it's okay no matter what I choose. And being given that choice was amazing. And it asked me that question, and I just intuitively knew in that moment that, yeah, I'm not done here yet. There's so much more I want to experience. I just started this relationship with Lily, which I think can be truly magical. I just got to Thailand, and I want to. There's so much I want to experience. I don't think I'm ready to leave the physical plane, so to speak. And immediately when I made that decision, this same presence pretty much told me, instructed me, gave me the image of the Wim Hof method, for those of you who know what that is. And it essentially was instructing me, okay, you want to stay? I'm going to show you how you're going to be able to stay. I'm going to show you how you're going to stay conscious, how you're going to get out of this without really any damage, except, pretty nasty gash and maybe a scar, which I do have. It's actually pretty nutty because I look at the scar and, it's not that bad. You would never think, how crazy the actual thing was. Like, it healed up super nice. But when that was open, I was looking down at bone and blood gushing. It's just funny. Looking at the scar now and almost it being like, oh, it didn't even look like anything happened in a way. I mean, if you look at it closer, you're like, yeah, clearly something happened, but it's kind of funny now. But it gave me that to do the Wim Hof method. And I didn't question it. I knew everything right now was intuitive, was coming from somewhere beyond me. And I immediately started doing the Wim Hof method. And so what I think happened when I look back at this, I think that whatever this presence was, and I believe, I'll tell you my thoughts. I think this was the universe. I think this was divine intelligence. I think this was my higher self, whatever you want to call it, coming down to communicate with me. And this was my first experience of this happening so vividly. And why it gave me the Wim Hof method is because it knew I had an association with that, and it knew that that method, probably any other level of breathing technique or maybe some meditative technique would have helped me, but the one I knew the most and I knew how to specifically do was the Wim Hof method. And that's why it gave me that visual and that inclination to do that over something else, right? Because of what I knew and my associations to it. And so I started doing the Wim Hof method. And also know before this, I was phasing in and out of consciousness. Like there was a point where I could have completely passed out. My vision at this point is still gone. Like it hasn't come back. I started doing the Wim Hof method, and within about a minute, my vision started coming back. The color in my face started coming back. I think like the bleeding pretty much started to stop. I regained pretty much all of my consciousness, and my body started to vibrate. It literally started to vibrate, especially around the now open wound. And, I'm now smiling and laughing. I mean, it must have, I must think from like the perspective of like my girlfriend and like the people who were there, they must have been like, what the fuck is going on? Cause like, I'm in agony. I'm like, oh my God, I'm passing out. Oh my God, my eyesight's gone too. Just like, oh my God, guys, hey, what's up? Oh, isn't this amazing? Like it must have been like a really bizarre experience also for those who were there observing the whole just range of everything that occurred. But I did that and everything just started to come back. And I just, again, felt so much love. And that was kind of the overarching theme here is I just started doing that method and this love, again, just started coming up for me. I just was filled with so much love. And funnily enough, at that moment, like a minute or two later, the girl who would help me to the emergency room came in. I kept doing the Wim Hof method pretty much all the way up to the hospital. It's funny, the girl who was driving me, a nice little Thai lady, thought I was hyperventilating or panicking. Obviously, I guess not many people there know what the Wim Hof method is. So, I was going like that. So it sounds like I'm panicking or I'm hyperventilating. So she's kind of like patting me like, oh, it's okay. And I'm like, no, I'm great. And, then me and my girlfriend were talking in the car just kind of normally. And, I was just expressing how much love I had for her and just how incredible I felt right now that it was so weird, this dichotomy of having been in so much panic and fear to now like filled with love. And it's an experience I'll never forget. I went up to the hospital. I walked in. I didn't, they wanted to put me in. I just walked into the emergency room. I remember, because I'm basically high on my own supply, as Wim Hof would say here. Like my body's vibrating. I'm not feeling any pain anymore. I'm walking in normally with this huge gash in my leg, and one of like the nurses or one of the guys comes up and is like, "Oh, dude, are you okay?" I'm like, I don't know. I probably need someone to take a look at me. And so he immediately took me back into the emergency room. Doctor came in pretty quickly and they stitched me up, stopped the bleeding, all this kind of stuff. They put some liquid in there, which I think was supposed to help with the suture, as he said, also with the bleeding and all that kind of stuff. But, and then basically they stitched up my wound, got it so it was all together, cleaned it up, and I was on my way. And that's really the story, guys. But let me give you the lessons. I think you can probably gather some of the lessons I learned. The biggest lesson I learned, I would say, is that everything's going to be okay. It's funny how the universe works in a synchronistic way, because I was already learning intellectually the idea that everything's going to be okay. I listen to people like Alan Watts, for example, a lot, and some other spiritual teachers, where a lot of their message kind of comes back to this idea that, no matter whatever form you find yourself in or whatever's going on, everything's going to be fine. Everything's in divine plan. Everything is in this universal process and plan, and it's going to be okay, right? And I was starting to connect to this idea more and more. But of course, connecting to an idea intellectually and hearing someone else's experience is a lot different than having your own. And so in that moment when, I was losing my sight, or had lost my sight really, and everyone around me is in panic, and I'm getting to the point of panicking. To have that presence come in, this just warm, loving presence come in and tell me, under no uncertain terms, that everything's going to be fine no matter what. You're fine. You're loved. You're cared for. You're held right now in this moment, and everything's going to be okay. And that lesson I've taken since then and applied to my life in so many ways. It's a mantra I come back to every single time. You might not be able to see it, but I have tears that were starting to well over my eyes just thinking about this, because when I connect with that moment, I know that it's true. I know that what I was experiencing, what this presence was telling me was true. And the lesson it taught me from that moment on, everything's going to be okay. Live your life. I made a conscious choice in that moment. I truly believe I did, that I could have left and essentially what you would call die and move on to whatever the next thing is. But I chose to stay. And I did so with the wisdom, with the knowledge that I'm not going to be living my life in the same way. Things are going to change. There are going to be some changes in the sense of what my priorities are, what I'm willing to deal with and put up with, what I'll do from this new perspective of everything's going to be okay, so you might as well do what it is you want to do. And so guys, with this experience, of course, you can be skeptical about it. This is not, some kind of my way is the right way, or even my experience is what's going to be your experience. I don't know. But what I can tell you is the lesson I learned is to live life your way and no one else's way. That everything's going to be okay regardless. So, do what it is you want to do. Other things I learned is that the highest form I can be in, the highest energy I can be in is love. I'll never forget. And I've been feeling it a lot during this video, just the love I felt. And this was probably, this is not just love, this was unconditional love. This, no matter what I decide to do, no matter what I'm doing, no matter what I've done, no matter what I'm going to do, that I am loved, that I'm in love, that I am love. And I've taken that into my rest of my life, and this experience has been the catalyst for incredible change over the last 2 years. This was almost 2 years ago now. And so, I don't know what the lesson for you in that experience will be. I was really called to make this video. I was really inspired. I know it's probably, I've done it to the best of my ability because I can't remember exactly everything I said, which means hopefully I was in the flow. I was in the energy, re-experiencing that energy of what I felt that day. So I don't know if that's going to help any of you. I don't know if that gives you some insight. I'm not sure, but hopefully it does. Hopefully that's something that, I don't know, will speak to someone, even one person who's watching this video. My feeling is it will, because I don't think I would have been drawn to making this, going over this in as much detail as I have, if that was not the case. This is the most detail I've ever gone into it since it happened. And yeah, make of it what you will. Anyway, guys, I think that's going to do it for this one. That was what I learned from my near-death experience. What I believe was definitely a near-death experience for myself. As always, I love you. Remember that you are loved, not just by me, but there's something that pervades the whole universe, is behind the whole process of everything, that loves you too, always will, no matter what, forever, and always has. And I will see you in the next video.